What makes one worthy of following? Is it because they wield the strength of 10,000 men? Or because they seek wealth and glory beyond measure? Is it fate, a divine destiny, to lead, to rule? Or perhaps it is simply a matter of honor. In the end, there is only one truth. A leader without the trust of their subjects will soon be no leader at all.
Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and what you just saw was the trailer for the upcoming Total War 3 Kingdoms DLC, titled Fates Divided, which will be a chapter pack set in the year 200 at the onset of the famous Battle of Guandu, where Cao Cao and Yuan Shao will fight for the supremacy of the North. Now this DLC is set to release exactly 2 weeks from today, on March 11th, but before that, starting on March 2nd, I'll be able to start previewing the game on the channel. So if you want to find out everything there is to know about the upcoming DLC, and there are tons of groundbreaking changes, definitely hit that subscribe button so you can get notified the moment new videos are released. And while we're in the business of shameless self-promotion, I'm also excited to announce that I have recently launched my own Nexus.gg storefront, where you can buy games that I have personally curated, like Total War 3 Kingdoms and all its DLCs. And how Nexus works is that when you make a purchase through my store, which you can visit through the link in the description below, you will receive a Steam key on the platform of your choice, and instead of having Steam making all the profits, part of your purchase will now support the channel directly. And you can even see exactly how much will go to me with each purchase, so it's super transparent. So now that you all know where to buy Fates Divided, it's time to break down the trailer and share some of the exciting changes that are coming with this DLC. First, the trailer opens with a general whose artwork we have never seen before, preparing Yuan Shao's army for the march to Guandu. Now this brand new general is none other than Zhang He, who will go on to report back to Yuan Shao, who we see in the very next scene playing the game of Go, or Weiqi, by himself. Now this scene clearly is a nod back to the original Cao Cao cinematic trailer when the game first launched, where we saw this pair of childhood friends playing the game of Go together as allies in the coalition against Dongguo. Now 10 years later, friends have become rivals and allies have become enemies, as we can see that Yuan Shao is deeply saddened and disturbed by this prospect, as he turns a cold shoulder to Zhang He. And there are two major foreshadowings here, as we can clearly sense there is a discord between Zhang He and Yuan Shao forming, and from the game of Go itself, we can even analyze Yuan Shao's move as a foreshadowing for his defeat at Guandu. For if you're unfamiliar with the game of Go, the objective of the game is simply to control more territories on the board than your opponent, and you do so by playing pieces to surround and capture the enemy pieces while preventing your opponent from doing the same to you. And if we take a quick look at Yuan Shao's move here, the white's response would have to be here. And at first glance, if you take a look at the whole board, the black is in extremely good position with pieces spread across the board. And in particular in this corner, it looks like the black pieces are trying to surround and eliminate the white pieces here. But if you take a deeper look, you can see that white is actually super well connected and is threatening a surround around a group of small black pieces around the edge, which essentially forces black to play a 3. And if we take another look at the board at this point after 3 moves, it's pretty clear that black is now in trouble, as this outside group of well-positioned white pieces is actually forming a nice flank against the black pieces on the edge. So in essence, this is a fitting analogy to the historical events surrounding the Battle of Guandu, where Yuan Shao's poor decision-making turned an otherwise favorable position to a losing one. Then as this scene fades away, we finally get to see what has been happening with Cao Cao since we last saw him being betrayed by Lü Bu at the start of the 194 A World Betrayed chapter pack, as we will get the famous Baimen Lou scene from the Romance of Three Kingdoms, where a defeated Lü Bu is brought before Cao Cao and Liu Bei, pleading for his life. And while Cao Cao was briefly tempted by Lü Bu's talents, Liu Bei quickly reminded Cao Cao the fates of Ding Yuan and Dong Zhuo, which resulted in Lü Bu's execution. So this means that Lü Bu will not be playable in Fates Divided, as this execution took place historically in February of 199. Now, while it might look like Liu Bei is working with Cao Cao in this scene, remember that this execution took place in 199, as by the spring of 200, at the onset of this chapter pack, Liu Bei would take part in a failed Han plot to assassinate Cao Cao, which will see a massive retaliation from Cao Cao that will result in Liu Bei's exile to join Yuan Shao eventually, while losing Guan Yu temporarily to Cao Cao, which we will see very soon in the trailer, as the next scene brings us back to Yuan Shao's army, and more importantly, gives us another hint at the growing discord between Yuan Shao and Zhang He. Then we jump immediately to the God of War himself in action, as we can see Guan Yu making quick works of some soldiers dressed in Yuan Shao's color, which refers to the Battle of Baima Crossing, where Guan Yu was actually working under Cao Cao at this time to repay his debt to Cao Cao for sparing him and Liu Bei's wives, as he slayed one of Yuan Shao's best generals in Yanliang in this battle historically. But in the trailer here, we don't actually get to see Yanliang's death, as he is actually needed for the final cinematic showdown at the end of the trailer. But regardless, with Guan Yu's debt repaid, in the very next scene, we see him taking his leave away from Cao Cao on top of his famous red hair, which Cao Cao gifted to Guan Yu following Lü Bu's death. And this hints at the fabled 过五关斩六将 story arc, where Guan Yu tries to reunite with his brother. And for those of you who are interested in the Romance of Three Kingdoms version of this story, I actually have done a Let's Talk Lore on this in the channel, so if you want to check that out, simply click on the link above. Now, with Guan Yu out of the picture, we have our final grand cinematic moment in the trailer, which pays homage to the parlay scene from the 2010 Three Kingdoms TV series, where Cao Cao bought time for the sun to be in the right place and for his cavalry to flank behind Yuan Shao's army before the fighting commenced. Now, another highlight here is the number of new generals being shown in the background and Zhang He's betrayal. First off, on Cao Cao's side, the two generals behind him are new artworks for Cao Ren and Yu Jin, while behind Yuan Shao, we have the famous pair of Yanliang and Wen Chou. As for Zhang He's betrayal, it has already been hinted so many times throughout this trailer that we can see it coming, but historically speaking, along with a multitude of other things in this scene, this is quite fictional. Now, of course, the whole battle scene here is totally fictional, as both CA and the 2010 Three Kingdoms TV crew takes a lot of liberties with the Battle of Guandu. Historically speaking, there was never this full-scale open field battle during the Guandu campaign, mainly because Cao Cao was so heavily outnumbered in the range of 5-1 that such an open field battle would have been foolish and suicidal. Instead, Guandu was mainly a 3-month-long siege defense for Cao Cao, with occasional raids against Yuan Shao's main forces in order to blunt some of the siege attempts. Now, at the climax of this campaign, when Cao Cao was able to raid and burn down Yuan Shao's supplies at Wuchao, Zhang He did defect, which further contributed to the morale swing that would see Yuan Shao's army rout in massive numbers. So technically, there's still some sense of historical logic behind the scene, but we're not going to dive too deep into it here, as there will definitely be a Guandu Let's Talk Lore series on the channel in the future. So stay tuned for that. Now, aside from being able to break down this trailer, I am constrained on how much more I can share about this DLC today, as the embargo period for the previews doesn't start until March 2nd, but I am allowed to highlight some of the secrets that might be shown on the marketing screenshots that you guys might not know about. Now, starting with Cao Cao and Yuan Shao, who are clearly the stars of this DLC. Both of these factions will gain 5 additional unique units, which you can maybe try to guess from their unit cards being shown on these 2 battle screenshots. Then on top of getting these faction unique units, since the Battle of Guandu is about the control of the North, the winner of this conflict will also gain access to the fabled Northern Army, which contains units that match the quality of the Imperial Army, and they're being added in this DLC. But unlike the Imperial Army, which are locked behind the reform tree, the Northern Army can only be recruited by generals who are holding on a special follower item called the Northern Colonels. Now, there are going to be 5 of these follower items, and they are bound to the character that you equip them on until death. But this also means if you're playing as any of the other factions in the game, and you happen to defeat one of the generals who has one of these items, and capture them and execute them whichever way you want to gain the item, then you too can gain control of the powerful Northern armies, as the item itself will unlock the Northern Army units for the general that's equipped with it. Now, also on these screenshots are the new portraits for Cao Ren and Cao Pi on Cao Cao's side, and Yuan Tan and Yuan Shang for Yuan Shao's side. Now, of course, there's going to be a bunch of other general artworks added in this DLC, but I'm only allowed to share what's been made public so far, so if you want all the details, make sure to subscribe to the channel and come back on March 2nd when I'll do a deep dive video on everything that's new being added to the game with the release of this DLC. And speaking of these new additions, Cao Cao and Yuan Shao are not just getting some new units, but also getting a complete revamp of their current existing faction unique mechanics. Starting with Cao Cao, you will now be able to use your credibility points to perform schemes, which can grant powerful buffs or debuffs on targets such as characters, factions, commanderies, and armies. And this is all in addition to the existing manipulate and proxy war mechanics. Then for Yuan Shao, those cheap captain retinues that can be spammed to overwhelm your opponents are now getting an armory mechanic where you can use your lineage points to customize and upgrade each individual captain retinue to make them into powerhouse units that will far surpass what regular units are capable of, which is made pretty clear if you look at the unit card being shown here, which is a heavy shot cavalry with only 14 out of the possible 29 upgrades, and you already have 273 melee charge bonus with a decent speed of 78 at 63% armor, and 37 armor piercing melee damage at 23 attack speed. So essentially, you're paying Captain Retinue money for a unit that already matches the capability of heavy cataphracts. And as an added bonus, you can even rename all your Captain Retinue units starting from level 1 to give them more individuality. And we can't mention faction unique mechanics without mentioning a completely new faction being added into the game. As if you notice from the cover arts of Fates Divided, there is a brand new artwork on the right side here, and I'm excited to announce that this new artwork is for Liu Yan, as he officially joined the fray as a new playable faction. Now, for those of you who are well versed in Three Kingdom history, you might be asking, how is someone who is supposed to be dead by the year 200 being added into the game? Well, the answer is that Liu Yan, who is the father of Liu Zhang, is the first cross-generational faction being added to the game, where the father and son combo shares the same faction mechanics and can be played across multiple start dates, with Liu Yan taking the helm in 190 and 194 before passing the reins to Liu Zhang in the 200 start. And to reinforce this cross-generational gameplay, their faction mechanic is called Aspiration and Inheritance, where when you're playing as Liu Yan, you're working hard to complete missions to acquire aspiration points for your heir. Then once you die, or decide to pass on the reins and step aside as a leader, which now is a new mechanic for certain factions, your heir will be able to take control and spend those aspiration points you have acquired on powerful inheritance bonuses that will only be unlocked after you issue the inheritance. Now, of course, we'll go deeper into this mechanic once we do the faction previews, once the embargo starts. And finally, the last thing that I can share here is that Faction Council is getting a complete makeover, as they will no longer be simple missions that you will forget to do every year. Instead, each member of your Faction Council will present you with 2 plans that you can pick from each year and will have extremely impactful results in the game. And not only will this be something you can use, the AI can use these as well. So just looking at the screenshot, we can see that one of the plans being presented by Yuan Shang here is to spend 1,000 coppers to incite a scandal in the foreign court, where Xiahou Yuan will lose 80 points of satisfaction. Now this is huge for potential turncoats or even just forcing them to leave the enemy faction. And if you look at the text under each of the generals being shown here, you can see that some of the actions will launch rebel raids from your vanguard generals in Yanliang, actions that can target enemy generals from your champion general in Wenchou, economic focus actions from your sentinel general in Zhanghe, and public order and satisfaction-based actions from your commander general in Yuanshang. And even though I'm not allowed to share more details about this mechanic right now, I can tell you guys that some of the actions are mind-blowingly strong and changes how the game is played, and some are just great quality of life changes that we've been asking for a long time. So once again, if you want to find out about these changes and other changes that I can't even talk about today, make sure to subscribe and come back on March 2nd when there will be a full dive video that will last more than an hour that will cover everything that's coming with this DLC. So at the end of the video here, I'm just going to leave you guys the schedule of the upcoming preview contents that will be on the channel in the coming weeks, leading to the launch of the DLC. Once again, if you're interested in pre-ordering the DLC through my Nexus Store to help support the channel, the link is in the description below. It might take a few days for the DLC to be added to the Nexus system, so keep checking, and I'll definitely make an announcement through the community tab when it does happen. And if you have a cheaper way to purchase the DLC or are going to wait for a sale, then I totally understand and would appreciate just a like or a comment to help support this video. And lastly, if we do get 1,000 likes on this video, I'll make a speculation video about the future of Three Kingdom DLCs after Fates Divided this weekend, because it has been so painful to not be able to join in on all the speculation fun regarding Fates Divided in the past few weeks because of NDAs, that I thought that maybe I can just get ahead of it this time and dispel some of the doomsayers around Three Kingdoms and provide the DLC pipeline that CA will never provide ahead of time in a fun speculation video. So if you want to see that, make sure to like this video. And once again, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!